Hi, good morning. I sat down to film a different video and there is breaking news out right now that Donald Trump is considering temporarily pulling Todd Blanche's nomination for Attorney General. And I want to talk about it for a second. Before I left on my trip to the UK, I filmed a video about Todd Blanche and how important it was that he not be confirmed as AG, and then I forgot to publish it. And because the pace of news is so fast, when I got back 10 days later, like it's already too late. So I just deleted it and moved on. And I really expected, maybe this is me being a little bit too jaded, but I really expected that Republicans were going to go ahead and push him on through. To hear that Senator Cornyn and Senator Tillis are both not cheesed and they are pumping the brakes on voting to confirm Todd Blanche, and also Mitch McConnell is MIA. I'm a little bit surprised, pleasantly surprised by that news. We understand all of the reasons that Todd Blanche is a complete disaster. He's Donald Trump's personal attorney. He said under oath, "Donald Trump, I love you." He is full in on MAGA. He's full in on doing whatever dear leader wants. And, I'm not sure if that's because it just benefits him personally or if he actually is like fully in the cult, right? If he's drunk all of the Kool-Aid or not. It's difficult for me to parse that out, but he is perfectly willing to cross every line, to humiliate himself in every way, to debase himself in every way for Donald Trump. So I do think his loyalty may be real. And I know it's baffling for most of us when we see all of these folks who surround Donald Trump and they're in this cult. And he has that young aide who's like his diaper changer and follows him everywhere. And people in his circle say that she has an unhealthy relationship with him. There's lots of folks like that. Pam Bondi also firmly basically worshipped Donald Trump. For those of us who are not indoctrinated, who are not brainwashed, we don't understand how Donald Trump is even charismatic, much less how he compels these people to sacrifice all of their integrity, their entire lives in the service of him. We know that it wasn't really Pam Bondi, it was really Todd Blanche who is the architect of all of the Epstein cover-up that is currently ongoing. That he met with Epstein victims and they felt dismissed. They felt that it was a terrible meeting, right? Todd Blanche behaved as expected. And in that Epstein files cover-up, there are wealthy, powerful men and institutions and governments and what have you who are being protected, but I personally, headcanoning it, right, think that Todd Blanche did that primarily to protect Donald Trump, primarily in the service, in the loyal subjugation, in the willing to tank his career, risking getting disbarred, risking prosecution, to do whatever it takes to protect Donald Trump. But here's the thing. If Todd Blanche is willing to do all of this because he actually is basically worshipful when it comes to Donald Trump, it doesn't really explain why Republicans in Congress overwhelmingly have been willing to do everything that Donald Trump wants. The bulk of Republicans in the Senate talk about Trump behind his back. The bulk of Republicans in the Senate think that he sucks. They think that he's embarrassing. They think he's bad for the party, but they do whatever he wants anyway. Now, there have been a few times that they've broken with him, right? John Thune, I think in particular, is like, motherfucker, what have I gotten myself into? He's not been willing to override the filibuster in order to get the SAVE Act passed. There are lines that he hasn't been willing to cross, but overwhelmingly, Senate Republicans have just, as my Senator Jeff Merkley says, rubber stamped everything that Donald Trump wants. So I really expected all of them to go ahead and vote to confirm Todd Blanche. But Donald Trump really shot himself in the foot, as narcissists are wont to do, right? All he can focus on is his petty revenge, and he can't, right? He's blinded by his rage, and he can't really see the overarching consequences of booting career senators to the curb, getting them voted out in the primaries, and how that might create problems when they then become lame ducks in the Senate. And they have nothing left to lose. Donald Trump has already destroyed their careers, functionally driven Tom Tillis and John Cornyn into retirement. So then Trump doesn't have that leverage over them to get them to bend the knee and to vote however he wants. And we're seeing these two senators stand up right now and Trump being like, well, shit, now I might have to pull Todd Blanche. I don't know how long they'll hold out. Now, you notice Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski have not said that they're not going to vote for Todd Blanche. You've noticed that all of the other Republicans, lock, stock, and barrel, they're willing to do what Donald Trump wants, knowing that Todd Blanche not only is engaging in a cover-up, denying Jeffrey Epstein survivors justice, denying the American people justice, but also that a judge has referred Todd Blanche to the bar for this IRS, right, tax deal that he did where Donald Trump functionally sued himself, and the settlement was likely illegal, and the judge has been like, they can't have this slush fund, you can't, we're gonna crack this wide open, and hey, maybe Todd Blanche needs to lose his law license. In normal times, with a normal functional government, with a legitimate Republican Party, not a fascist Republican Party that is subservient to Donald Trump, but a party who actually represents their constituents, all of these things would be deal breakers. So it is important, I think, for us to remember the fact that Republicans are voting for these nominees, the fact that Republicans are even considering pushing Todd Blanche through right now, is such a testimony to how the Republican Party is entirely corrupt, entirely illegitimate. They are not a party of democracy. They're not a party that represents their constituents. They're not a functional political party at all. They are a puppet of Donald Trump. They are a party of fascism. They are a party of undemocracy and unfreedom. I do think it's really good for us to remind ourselves that the Republican Party has no business ever having power in government again. Not for the rest of our lives. I think they're a party that should be functionally dismantled, right? And obviously everybody in the Republican Party who is complicit in the crimes that Donald Trump is committing now should be investigated and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I think we will see establishment Democrats have a severe hesitancy to follow through on that. They didn't follow through in the Biden years at all. Maybe some of these new progressive folks will. And speaking of Republicans not being allowed to have power after the midterms ever again, we are approaching the midterms. So when Donald Trump says, I'm going to pull Todd Blanche until after the midterms, and then I'm going to go ahead and push him through, there is an ever increasing likelihood that Democrats will have the majority after the midterms. So the fact that Donald Trump thinks, well, I'll just put Blanche up again after the midterms and then he'll get voted in, I think is really a demonstration, is proof positive of one of two or both of two things: that he is so cognitively impaired that all he can do is glom onto this, like, I have to rig the midterms. That is my only way out of this. I'm going to be successful in rigging the midterms. I think he's future faked himself, right? He still believes that he can strong arm Congress into pushing through the SAVE Act. He still believes that he's going to be successful in subverting free and fair elections in the midterms, and therefore Republicans will have control after the election. Or in addition, I think that this is evidence of what happens with autocratic leaders, and I want to talk about this more in a little bit, where his acolytes and his advisors around him are afraid to tell him the truth. They're afraid to be honest with him. This is a classic blind spot, a classic failure of autocrats. It's something that Gene Sharp talks about pretty extensively in his book, From Dictatorship to Democracy, is that when an autocrat is somebody who reacts with emotional volatility, somebody who's angry, and those around him are afraid to be honest with him and give him bad news, negative news, he starts functioning without all of the data points. Cognitively impaired already, right? So he's already not functioning, right? He didn't have, right? He didn't have all of his cognitive capabilities. He's not operating with his full faculties. But then he's missing data. He's missing information. I think he believes things are not as bad as they are, because I imagine, we know that those around him are afraid to give him bad news because he is he's so volatile. And when that happens for autocratic rulers, they are likely to make mistakes because they are making decisions without knowing all of the components, without having all of the necessary information to make an informed decision. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. So I hope that he does pull Todd Blanche. Maybe we'll know by the end of the day. I also hope that Cornyn and Tillis hold their ground. If they are your senators, I really encourage you to reach out to them, give them a call and say, thank you. I know that they don't really have to listen to folks who aren't their constituents, but I think it's worth everybody calling and emailing and saying, please hold the line. You're doing the right thing. I know we often think that members of Congress don't care about feedback. They actually do. They get their strength from us. They get their power from us. And so even though, right, overwhelmingly they're supporting Donald Trump, the times that Republicans do stand up against him and do the correct thing, do the right and moral and just and legal thing, we should give them their flowers. We should give them positive feedback. So maybe consider taking a moment and calling and saying, thank you, continue to hold the line and continue to be strong. Then I guess we'll see how all of this plays out, if Todd Blanche gets pulled for now and what the consequences of that are.